Hello and welcome to the Antigua and Barbuda Intellectual Property and Commerce Office's video series entitled Conversations on Intellectual Property, under the theme Intellectual Property and the Sustainable Development Goals, Building Our Common Future with Innovation and Creativity. The Intellectual Property and Commerce Office is more commonly known by the acronym ABIPCO, or the Intellectual Property and Companies Registry, located in St. John City on St. John Street, here on the Gem of the Caribbean. My name is Kyle Kentish, and I am the Deputy Registrar at the Intellectual Property and Companies Registry. For this conversation, I'll be speaking with Ms. Joy Marie King, a trade negotiator at the multilateral level, a Sustainable Development Goals focal point, and the Director of International Trade at the Antigua and Barbuda Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Trade. Welcome, Ms. King.
Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome, dear. Please introduce yourself and tell us about your background.
Well, as you would have mentioned before, my name is Joy Marie King, and I'm the Director of International Trade within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Of course, I'm a trade negotiator, Sustainable Development focal point, and I also served as the lead technical person when Antigua and Barbuda was presenting its first VNR to the United Nations in relation to our progress in implementing the Sustainable Development Goals.
Okay.
In my previous work life, I would have been an economist at the Bank of Jamaica.
Okay.
Yes. And in terms of my academic background, I have a first degree in political science with psychology and a master's degree in international trade policy.
Got you.
Yes.
You mentioned the VNR. What's that?
So the VNR is a progress report
Okay.
that Antigua and Barbuda would have done and presented to the High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development back in 2021. And that report would have highlighted our successes as it relates to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, some of our challenges. We would have also shared best practices. And our report went beyond the normal report by indicating various policy initiatives that we can implement to accelerate implementation of the goals.
Understood.
Yes.
So, how did you get involved in these or those areas of work?
So quite interestingly, while I was pursuing my first degree in political science, I would have met with a professor teaching a particular master's program, international trade policy, and he would have read a few of my papers and said he thought I would have been an ideal candidate for this master's program. Initially, I was a bit hesitant, but he would have encouraged me. I went, I succeeded, and eventually after I left the Bank of Jamaica and returned to Antigua, I would have gained employment with the government of Antigua and Barbuda, and I was handed the international trade portfolio. And then a few years after, the Sustainable Development Goals.
Understood. The power of people.
Yes.
You know, Ms. King, this year, on the 26th of April, we observe World Intellectual Property Day 2024. You know, it gives us an opportunity to explore how intellectual property encourages and can amplify the innovative and creative solutions that are so crucial to building our common future. Has intellectual property benefited the work that you do?
Absolutely. If I look at the Sustainable Development Goals, we are halfway to the 2030 deadline.
Okay.
And because of COVID, many of the gains that would have been made globally as it relates to those goals have been undermined. So for a lot of the countries, we're starting from scratch again. And intellectual property allow for investments in technology. And those investments in technology through international trade can be gained access for the members. Not only just the WTO, but every member of the world, countries of the world. And the SDGs are all interconnected. So I think innovation through intellectual property allows for us to capitalize on the interconnectiveness of the goals, meaning achievement in one goal can translate to progress in another. And it provides an excellent tool to turbocharge implementation.
Right.
Yes.
Right, I follow you. So speaking of those Sustainable Development Goals, I'm sure you're aware, and therefore let us also make our listening audience aware, that the United Nations has identified 17 of them.
Yes.
And they are, in short, no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions and partnerships for those goals. What does sustainable development in that context, therefore, mean to you?
Well, in simple terms, it's about safeguarding what we have presently for the benefit of our tomorrow or future generations.
Understood.
In simplest of terms.
Yes, yes, indeed. So, and leading on from that, although you've touched on it to some degree, as to the connection between intellectual property and the work that you do and how it has benefited the work that you do, can you give us an idea as to how you believe intellectual property can support the achievement of sustainable development goals?
I think one of the main areas of support that intellectual property can lend to the goals is for us to achieve accelerated implementation of the goals. We're at that stage where we need to really turbocharge implementation. And intellectual property, through innovation, creativity, competitiveness, can really drive momentum in that direction.
Yes. Yes. I'm glad you spoke of turbocharging, because this next question is this. If our common future can be thought of as a shared road ahead, then how do you envision your field of work helping to build that road?
Well, quite interestingly, my field of work is rather dynamic. And it is one that involves, for example, in relation to international trade, the setting of rules and obligations that nations are supposed to be abiding by as it relates to accessing goods and services for their respective populations.
Right.
And then when you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, it's looking at the 3 pillars of sustainable development, providing prescriptions for preserving our environment, building stronger, more resilient economies, and then, of course, the social fabric of our societies, whether it be mitigating hunger, elimination of poverty, as you would have mentioned earlier, education, good health and well-being. So what I'm working on is basically me contributing to the global survival of our world.
I follow you.
Yes. So it's very important, it's very critical. It will definitely determine the trajectory of where we go as a global community.
I mean, we all appreciate trying to draw a line between a few of the concepts that we've spoken about today. The ability to go into a doctor's office and come out quickly and with an efficient and accurate diagnosis of the problem that we may be facing. And so, that was insofar as we turbocharge the prescription. You were talking about being prescriptive, in the sense of legislation, in the sense of policy, in the sense of the way we think, the way we're trained or educated to think, how we think, and the results of us putting our thinking into a form that allows us to achieve sustainable development. And so, having encapsulated our conversation to some degree in that way, what advice would you give to those young thinkers out there who would be trying to effect change?
I think the first critical aspect of that is you need to be passionate about whatever it is that you are willing to change. And it also needs to challenge you as an individual to foster that growth and development, because continuous growth and development as a person, as a people, imperative. Yeah. And any initiative that you are going to get involved in, you need to make sure that it empowers your people. Yeah. So people empowerment and passion and that individual, that personal growth. Yeah. All very critical if you want to indeed effect change.
Indeed.
Yes.
How about the 3 Ps? Purpose, empowerment, people empowerment, and passion.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that it would be also important to highlight that in the same way as we would give that advice to persons to have those 3 Ps, that any person seeking to inculcate, to show persons, just as you are, that those 3 Ps are important, that they too should have a passion for being able to show and develop and harness and provide good guidance, just as your professor, I believe, another P, did,
Absolutely.
Sure. So in sum, or finally, how would you say we can learn more about what you're doing?
So I am available on social media. Good. Yes. So my Instagram handle is joymarie.king.
Okay.
Without the hyphen.
Okay, good.
I'm also on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And that's Joy Marie King with the hyphen.
With the hyphen.
Yeah.
That's between Joy Marie.
Joy Marie.
Good.
And of course, as relates to the Sustainable Development Goals in Antigua and Barbuda, we have an SDG website, and it can be accessed at www.sdgs.gov.ag. And that website basically outlines Antigua's and Barbuda's progress towards implementation of the goals.
Okay.
It also highlights a number of public advocacy and awareness initiatives that we would have undertaken. Yeah. Just recently, we would have concluded a debating competition, SDGs themed, between a team from the University of the West Indies Five Islands campus, yes, and the Antigua State College. Yeah. We would have also had a number of stakeholder engagement, looking at various aspects of the SDGs. So all that information is currently being updated and can be accessed at that website.
Lovely.
Yes.
Lovely. Well, thank you so very much for speaking with us today, Ms. K.
Thank you for having me.